Hello, friends. Before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to give you a warning that we are going to be talking about open spoilers for the new Matrix movie. That will go on until about 11 minutes and 36 seconds. So if you want to avoid all of that, go ahead and skip to 11 minutes and 36 seconds. Thank you all so much and enjoy the episode.
I have never seen a more pretentious sack of flaming crap in as many years as James Cameron's career.
What, James Cameron's career? Wow.
Wow.
You didn't go with the Michael Bay, which I thought you'd be. Well, although it's not, his stuff isn't really pretentious. It knows exactly what it is. So.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
No, I was just shocked. It's shockingly bad. Like, and it seems that the people who love it are like, oh, well, you don't really get it. It's this meta commentary on the pointlessness of sequels. And no, Lana is just incompetent. That's the actual answer. It's a ham-fisted track of garbage that goes on for almost 3 hours, and I don't even know how.
Is it really almost that long?
It's 2.5. It's like 2 and 40.
Long.
Yeah.
Fucking long.
So I was listening to one of the podcasts that I listen to frequently, and he said that one of the guys was like, every time the new Agent Smith was on screen, I just wanted to die.
Yes. I mean, I don't even know where to begin in explaining how stupid it is. Like,
I want you to explain that to me. Like, what is so bad about the new Agent Smith? Because I'm very curious.
He's like a knockoff Agent Smith. It's like if you went into, I don't know, like a knockoff Toys R Us and found this toy of Agent Smith that's kind of like Agent Smith, but it's just like dumber looking and cheap. Okay. That's what he is.
So he's like the Spirit Halloween like costume of Agent Smith, basically.
Yes. And there's nothing worse than that. The possibly the worst scene in the entire thing is when the Merovingian shows up again, if that's how you pronounce it.
I think it's Merovingian if it's historical.
Merovingian. Yes. Yeah. The dumb like rogue program. It is, he just babbles this nonsense that's like anti-capitalist kind of. And he's like a hobo. It's just, you're just like stunned at that point. You're like, what is even happening?
I've heard, by the way, that that even the fight scenes are really lackluster.
They're terrible.
Not very good.
Really?
Yeah. Which is like,
that's disappointing.
For the Matrix sequels, right? Like, as dog shit as they were, at least they had cool fights in them.
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Then,
yeah.
Like, you're taking even that away from the fourth one, which
I mean, there's this argument, I guess, that it's deliberately crap because it's supposed to be like a lampooning of the need of the fact that there shouldn't have been sequels, but you can't like claim the irony of that and also actually make the sequel. You know, like, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. You can't have your cake and eat it too. That's just not how it works.
Yeah, I'll give you some retrospective here. I watched the first two. I watched the first one on DVD. I watched the second one in theaters, and I did not watch the third one because of how bad.
I don't blame you. It was terrible.
After the second one, it was like, well, I'm all set with this.
I'm out.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah, you don't need to, because and legitimately, right? Like, the first movie is good. Like, the
first movie is
rewatched
amazing.
it. The first movie is actually good, is groundbreaking, and is really, really cool. But like the second one, I was just like, this is just so fucking terrible.
The reason why,
like, actively cringe.
Yeah.
The reason why the first Matrix is so good is because it raises questions, right? And it lets you fill in the gaps. And the second you get past Neo like flying into the air, like, the story's over. We don't need to know anything more because we know, the whole point is this is going to be a revolution. We don't want to see the revolution because what the hell? What's the point? Like, if we want to see that, we don't want to see you actually fight Sauron. We just want to know there's a possibility of beating him. And the rest of the movie is floundering trying to do that, and you don't need that. I mean, the only add-on that I found great was the Animatrix ones. Because
the Animatrix is great.
Yeah, because they give you little glimpses of what's possible with the Matrix, and that was cool. Like, I could see you doing a sequel movie that's like an hour and a half tops, and it's not a sequel. It just like takes a little segment of the Matrix and does a little exploration. But even that's unnecessary, honestly.
Yeah.
So I want to say, right, that the sequel, I haven't seen the third one, so I can't speak to that, but I can speak to the second one. I feel like the Matrix sequels, all they are building up to is like, how can we make it so Neo just doesn't end the movie within 5 minutes?
Right, that's what it is.
Because like at the end of the first one, it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
he's God now.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
God now. And then so like the other two movies are like, all right, how can we prevent this from happening so we can really drag this plot out as much as
I
possible?
mean, my friend David, and this is going too far in explanation. My friend David he said that he sat down and rewatched the first two because he didn't really understand like the premise of the sequels. And when he explained to me what the additional lore added, I was like, this is horrible. And this is another reason why these movies should never have been made. Like the idea that the whole one program was actually, or the one concept is actually a routine in the Matrix, and that what it equates to is that at the end of the day, everything Neo did was pointless. And so it almost necessitates this final movie. But the problem is in this final movie, you don't even understand what's happening, let alone what the point is.
Also, I know that Lawrence Fishburne doesn't return. That's correct,
He
right?
does not. Yeah.
He does not,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you know why that is?
From outside of the movie, no. There's probably some reason beyond the movie that he doesn't, because
I would love
you could
to
have
tell
absolutely had him. You could have totally had him in it.
I would love to tell you why, because it's fucking terrible. Okay.
Why?
The reason Larry Fishburne does not return as Morpheus is because Morpheus canonically dies in the MMORPG, the Matrix game.
I mean, I know that, but I don't understand why he doesn't come back from an extra movie, like outside the movie. Like, is there a reason why they didn't want the actor back, or is it just because
because the character canonically dies in the video game? He dies in the video game, Daniel.
But so does Trinity, so it's like it doesn't really make a difference.
But
wait, Trinity canonically dies?
Yes.
See, okay, you're way more into the Matrix MMO.
I mean, she dies in the third movie, so there's no reason why you can't just bring people back. They bring her back.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Didn't Morpheus like appear in the newest movie?
It's like he's this Morpheus / Agent Smith mix program. It's so fucking dumb.
That's gross. Why would they do that?
It sounds really dumb.
Yeah,
it's fucking dumb. I mean, I just think they hate Lawrence Fishburne. There must be some reason, because the guy was like, they didn't even ask me to come back.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds correct.
So mean.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like there's an issue with like power creep in a lot of media, where like a character reaches a certain point where they're basically a god, and then the author or the creator is like, ah, shit, what do I do now? I gotta like create some bullshit excuse for why he's like powerless now or whatever. And that definitely happened with the Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is in anime, Daniel, I apologize, but in anime, this is often considered the Dragon Ball problem, where it's like you have this like power scale of escalation, right? Where it's like you're just fighting gods, and then where do you go from there, right? Which is why I think I love JoJo's Bizarre Adventure as much as I do, is because like, you know, each story resets, like has a hard reset point for a lot of it. And so eventually, right, like you might end up fighting something that is like a godlike being, and then you don't win because you power up, you win because you trick it into killing itself, right? Like that's how it ends up. And
something clever.
Right, exactly. And then so in the next iteration, when you're fighting something that's incredibly powerful, it's not like you're like, oh, I'm level 7,000 now. It's like, no, I was 5,000 and that's the ceiling that I've hit, and I'm not going to do better than that.
Yeah.
But also what it does, it's like the reason I like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure so much is because structurally, that reset point, like you'll often start they'll often start a series with like new character who has to develop their power set again, but then like another character will come by as like a reference point, but like, oh shit, that character's really powerful because he was in the last series, right? But what that often does is it sets the stage for the villain to showcase how strong they are compared to the previous cast a lot of the time, or like sometimes it's just like a complete reset where it's like, oh, well, guess what? Like we were fighting, you know, like an ancient vampire before who could stop time. now we're fighting a serial killer who can turn things into bombs. Like that's basically like the reset point. It's so much better than having to be like, well, we have the same characters. I guess we've got to bump them up in power even more. You can look at this in like Naruto as well, where it's like, oh, we're broken, we're disgustingly overpowered, but we can't, we don't have an excuse to depower them. So like, there's no critical stakes anymore.
Yeah, stakes is the issue. That's the problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the stakes of Matrix 1, it had nothing really to, in my opinion, it had nothing really to do with actual Neo or any of the characters. It had to do with the fact that we identify with Neo being trapped in a pointless job, in what we view as like a pointless existence, at the mercy of corporate forces. And someone whispers to you from the secret beyond, and suddenly, you have a way out. Like that was the cool part, us racing with him through the office to find our way to the secret place that's going to be our revolution or our freedom. And that's all we wanted from the movie. There's nothing more, pulling the wool off of our eyes.
Isn't that like the way that I would also kind of interpret that, right? Isn't that kind of a way of the producers or the director saying, hey, we can give you meaning? And it's like, from like a millennial or even a Gen X perspective, because I would imagine the Wachowskis are Gen Xers, right? But it's like, in the world that they are living in the world that we are living as millennials, right?
Right.
What is our purpose? We don't have a purpose because it's all been kind of stripped away. Yeah,
exactly.
And you're given meaning, and you're like, oh, now I'm invested because there's a
like
meaning.
Morpheus said, hey, there's a reason why I'm here, and you mean something. Like at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Oh man, this is a world building podcast, and I would imagine that this has something to do with it. But so I'm probably going to keep all that in, and I'm probably going to keep it in, but like with hey, we're going to be spoiling the new Matrix movie. So if you don't want to hear that, skip to this timestamp. But yeah, welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty. This is Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. Oh, well, let me try that again because I messed it up. My name is Rob Hilferty. My co-hosts today are Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. You know us by now. I mean, if you're starting with the year in review episode, I feel like you're making a bad decision because we're going to be going over all of our some of our favorite previous worlds from 2021. And this is our first episode of 2022. It's a grand old time. But before we get into all that, I do want to shout out and give a big thank you to our two newest patrons. We have Savajet and Bjorn. But yeah, again, thank you so much to our new patrons. We really can't do this without you. Welcome. And remember that if you want to be really generous yourself, you can always go to our Patreon with a link for that in the description. And you can join the God Pacted, the Giant Aphids, or the Goblins, whatever. We thank everyone for joining our Patreon. And remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, and submit a prompt through our link system. You can follow us on social media over on Twitter @Let's Worldbuild. If you want to join our Discord community, there's a link for that in the description. And I've already shilled the Patreon enough. So without further ado, on to 2022 and on to our review of 2021. So for this episode, we're going to be revisiting some of our old favorite settings from 2021. And Daniel, which setting did you want to start us off with today?
I would like to return to Ride the Lightning / I forget what it was called.
I had a feeling you were going to go with that one. Land of 1,000 Tracks, I think.
Yes, that's it.
Was that 2021?
It was, yeah.
I hope so.
Holy shit, was it really?
We did a lot of stuff this year.
Oh my god. Wow. Okay. I'm going to believe you, but at the same time I don't believe you.
That was back in March, actually. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I spent some time in there in RPG land, so it's pretty dear to me.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about that, Daniel? Why don't we start there?
Oh, about that we ran a game in it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was looking for one of the things I'm trying to do with OSR Plus, which is a RPG system I'm developing a tabletop, is having some crossover with Worldbuild with us, in the sense that I'm taking some of the settings and converting them into settings for the system. And so as a test, we chose Ride the Land of a Thousand Tracks as one example. And we do have recordings of our one shot, in which Courtney and Rob were in, among other people. Once they're cleaned up and we have a beta, I'll be ready to release those. But yeah, I spent some time in there thinking about what would character classes look like, and if you ran a one shot, what would that be? And I thought that was pretty fun.
Can confirm it was quite fun.
It was a lot of fun and ridiculous.
Yes, I would agree with that. I ended up playing a Crash Lander, and I was basically just a psychopath the entire time.
It was amazing.
I think you started off by ripping off somebody's arm.
Yes.
If I recall correctly.
Oh, yes. Okay. It was a corpse. It wasn't somebody. It wasn't like another player or something like that.
It was still a human being. It was just a deceased human being.
Oh, okay. A deceased human being stops being a human being and starts being a potential weapon when I rip its arm off. Okay.
I mean, the difference, if each of the settings have slightly modified rules. So the difference in this one, is written in a kind of OSR sense that if you run out of hit points, you're dead. We don't know your name, so that if you died, we could put you back in really quick as a different character.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really start with anything besides one item. So it's kind of bare bones dungeon crawl on a train.
Yeah, very bare. Hence why I was looting the corpses for potential weapons and just ended up ripping off an arm. But yeah, so Daniel, why don't you go ahead and tell us what aspect do you want to bring up that's new about Land of a Thousand Tracks, and what are we revisiting within this setting?
Now I need your help with this, but what I want to do is I want to take the trains and the tracks to space, or at least to at least to the atmosphere / orbital frame.
Mm-hmm.
And possibly have a train that is in space, that's orbiting the entire planet.
Okay, Daniel,
Trains
I
in
want to
space.
get this out of the way now. This is so fucking dumb, and I love it. I just want to get that out there now because, again, dumb, and I love it. Okay.
Yep. I'm thinking remember when you one-shotted that one NPC off the train? Imagine if you one-shotted that one NPC into the void of space.
Oh, shit. That's pretty cool, actually.
Okay. I get you.
Yeah.
So how? And also why? That's, I suppose those are where we want to start with this particular setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because the world is ravaged, right? It's a post-apocalyptic, with a bunch of lightning storms and stuff like that. And I imagine that that's kind of the power system that's going to propel them up into space. But I also imagine that they're going to need something that is supplementary, something that is more than just the lightning, right? Because that's not really propulsion enough to get us into the orbit.
I mean, one thought I had, not the how, but a why, or a context, is I was thinking kind of, that horrible movie Elysium, where there's
the Matt Damon,
yeah, there's I didn't see this movie, but from what I understand, there's a separate. Sorry about that.
Oh, I haven't seen it either, but I've heard about it.
Yeah, from what I understand, there's a second class of people, a higher class that exists in either space or above, where the people who live on the Earth is. It's all screwed up. So I'm thinking maybe there's another class of either survivors or scientists that are in space in this orbital frame, and there's some kind of passageway between the two that involves a space train.
Okay. Okay, I can start to get behind this because I think that actually Elysium is a good way to start us off here, where we can kind of talk about the Land of a Thousand Tracks, where it's essentially a blasted hellscape, right?
Yes.
I think that's actually fairly interesting to talk about, where we do have an Elysium style, spaceship or space station that hovers over, the Earth as we know it. Now, my question, Daniel, now becomes, are people from, the Earth trying to go up, or is the scientist class trying to go back down, or is there some kind of like semi-consistent train that goes back and forth, like a loop that goes up, like to and from the space station?
Ooh, I like the concept of a loop. I mean, one other thing
too,
I had introduced in the game version was the idea that remember we had mountains that were like pass-through stations.
Yes.
And I assigned a color to each, like the Crash Landers had like red mountain, and then there was like the
green and blue
people, blue and green. Like I think when in the episode we talked about green being this like biohazard place. So maybe there's like White Mountain or something like Black Mountain, and that's the space one, and there's a train that goes there.
You're asking if we can add Space Mountain to Land of Thousand
Space Mountain,
yes.
Okay, all right. I mean, I can support this. I don't see why not. However, again, there is a question of propulsion because, again, I don't feel like a lightning based or a generator based
train space elevator.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It goes up like a helix.
Sorry. One other thing that we had talked about in that setting originally, which I know we had been asked to keep it like a realistic kind of setting, but we came up with the idea of like electric jellyfish in the sky creating these storms. So I wonder if that could also be related to some sort of propulsion or like energy field that creates like an anti-gravity something in the atmosphere.
Okay. I like what we're doing here. I also like the idea that, to me, in my mind, I'm also thinking that this is kind of a Back to the Future situation where you have to essentially create a point where you can pick up enough speed that you can actually hit this thing and go up into the sky, essentially, right?
So you're doing like a Sonic the Hedgehog kind of like speed up blast off.
Well, no, you just need like a track long enough or like a specifically designed track.
Yes.
Yeah, like I'm thinking like, okay, like you're saying, you have to accelerate on this launch track, right? And then it hits the space elevator needle, and it's like this helix that takes you up like in a spiral on the space elevator, and maybe the jellyfish intelligence has something to do with powering that.
Okay.
Oh, maybe there's like a pillar of enclosed jellyfish in the center, like a giant like weird aquarium kind of thing, and that's what empowers it.
They're harnessing it.
Yes.
Maybe they're all attracted to it, like a hive of jellyfish or something like that.
It's a lightning rod for them.
Yeah.
I can support this. And so like maybe only when it's activated are they kind of attracted to it. So it's like Okay.
And they control it from up there. So access can only be turned on from above.
Interesting. Cool. Okay.
That way, like you can have somebody who's like on the inside who turns on access, and then you got to hijack a train and get up there to do your business in the skies.
So you're basically trying to create a sequel for the one shot that we did, where instead of taking over a regular train, we're now trying to take on the sky train. Okay,
space train.
Yeah, I see your plan, Daniel. I see what you're trying to do here.
Ride the lightning tube in space.
Exactly. You're also literally riding the lightning at that point because you're going up into fucking space.
Ride the lightning too. Literally riding the lightning.
Oh my
you
God.
Cut off there.
You did cut off, but that's fine.
Damn it. You can say it again if you like.
It's fine, Daniel. It's fine. Okay. So what else do we have to just all right. One other thing that I do want to kind of talk about is that I do find the idea of the regular trains that we've established basically helixing off into space to be somewhat unlikely, because the trains that we've established are essentially they're fairly bulky. They're fairly large. I don't see the trains that we've established making their way to space without like serious modification or like shedding a lot of what they have, because I see it like essentially just getting torn apart once it like tries to break orbit.
I mean, if you want to be like realistic about it or whatever, I guess we can.
Which we don't. Giant, with the giant jellyfish and all. But let's say that we did, Courtney. What would we do?
I mean, we could do some sort of like force field type thing, like that keeps out the void of space.
Yeah, it's a space elevator. So like a space elevator, the whole point of it is just to get in it and it takes you up into like, suborbital space without propulsion. So, like I could see the trains maybe like when they're on their way up there, like they're protected from whatever forces would normally destroy them, and they've got to connect with like the station up there. But I could also see like some hazards happening where like the shield breaks or something, and then you got like high stakes kind of chaos.
I see.
Or if the connection isn't quite stable with the station and the train does literally just go hurtling off into space.
Yes.
Maybe that's happened at some point.
Yeah. Okay. I can again, I do want there to be some semblance of we have to make sure that it's not just a regular train.
Yeah.
We have to have a train that like can seal itself, not just like, oh well, all trains can go into space, no problem. Like that obviously doesn't make very much sense,
I mean, what I think would be cool narratively is if yes, there is a particular space train that comes up and down, right, and has a track. But what would be fun from a narrative perspective is if like this heist scenario, like you do put a non-space train on those tracks and it will get ripped apart once it gets up there. But the idea is, can you ride the helix all the way up far enough to get to the station before your train falls apart?
Yeah. Ride the lightning too, ride the helix.
Literally riding the lightning.
Oh God. Okay. This is admittedly even perhaps a bit too ridiculous even for me, but I'm super down for it, just so we're clear.
I'm a fan.
I bet our train fan is going to enjoy this a whole lot, and I personally take responsibility for that.
Yeah, blame Daniel. I would agree with that. And I want to personally apologize because again, this was the original conceit of the setting was far more grounded in reality, and now we're like maglev trains shooting them off into space and just being like, see you later, space train. Like maybe we can get things a little bit more back on track. Courtney, what is the setting that you're hitting us with this time?
So on a completely different note and mood, I was going to go with Land of a Thousand Suns, which is our cripplingly depressing setting where robots are like vessels for human psyches, but also have their own sentience, and they're obsessed with like research and learning to the point where they're trying to cause stars to go supernova and create black holes and all of that. And there was like torture and pain robots, and it was really messed up and terrible.
Yes. Yeah. Think the Cenobites, but as researchers and robots with humans trapped inside, and that's basically what we've got. Yeah. So I wanted to actually draw inspiration from another setting that we made, which was Land of a Thousand Light-Year Journeys, where we had established that some sort of this like ancient intergalactic conflict had led to a weapon being used that made like dust or radiation that was limiting faster than light communication and travel, which would make a lot of sense in this setting if a rebellious faction on that world realized what was going on and spent their lifetimes creating this weapon that could cut their sector of the universe off so that the robots couldn't do their whole hive mind communication with other worlds. So basically that faction is like saving the rest of the universe by cutting themselves off completely from everything and sort of dooming themselves. That's actually that's a really interesting idea. I love that idea.
Okay.
Wait, I don't think I understand. Give me another take at explaining that to me.
Okay, so in the Land of a Thousand Suns setting, we had those like evil robots who were exploding the sun.
Yes.
And they had some sort of hive mind connection to other robots across the universe.
Right. Okay.
Try to do the same thing. So if the sort of rebellious faction on that planet figured out a way to like basically block themselves off and like go black in the universe and just cut everything down, that they would do that, thus saving everybody else sort of at the cost of their own eternal suffering.
They're essentially trying to quarantine themselves to make sure that this robotic hive mind does not expand out and continue to snuff out suns one by one.
Exactly.
By disrupting the whole is the idea.
Yeah, so like basically making it so that the robots within can't communicate out and nothing can really see in.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
See, this is way more hopeful than that original setting
And yeah, I
was.
wanted to, make it a little bit more light and give some
Creating
amount of hope.
personal hell for them.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's very hopeful.
What did you? Okay, wait a minute. Did you
Mhm.
just read "I have no mouth and I must scream"? And you're like, how can we make it more similar to "I have no mouth and I must
No, I
scream"?
didn't actually. No, I haven't gone back and read that lately.
I see. Well, you should, because it's great.
Yeah.
Harlan
Oh, I
Nelson's
know.
great.
I know, it's great.
So how can
Mm.
they do this? I can understand why. It's an altruistic task. Totally understand that. The question is how, and I'm assuming that this is going to be the metaphorical jungle that we're getting into here.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, and I would love your guys' thoughts on like how they would go about that. If it's some sort of literal weapon that they blow up and creates like a physical blockade, or if there's something else going on. What do you guys think?
Well, I guess can we revisit a little bit of the details of that setting? Um, like what was the relationship between? Because this was a world where there were no humans, right?
Yeah, it was the humans on the planet had essentially died off, or their consciousnesses were like within the robots.
Like fragments, right?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm recalling correctly, what was supposed to happen was the human consciousnesses were supposed to be the primary consciousnesses that
Yes.
were
Yeah.
controlling the robots, right?
Yeah.
However, what ended up happening was the robots ended up taking more direct control.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
they started to torment and experiment on the human psyches within.
Yes, and I think they were able to take control because of the like endless amounts of sunlight that the planet was getting, because it has multiple suns. So, and they were powered by solar energy, so they were basically like overpowered at that point, and that's how the robots kind of took over unintentionally.
And there's only a few humans that are semi-conscious or like have exerted some kind of influence.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they had sort of fled to this large jungle thing on the planet.
Oh, the Eden. That's right, in the darkness.
The dark area where they could sort of regain control a bit, although at the cost of kind of their own longevity.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember there was a lot more that were missing about the jungle.
There was a lot in the setting.
Yeah, the setting was a lot. It was pretty bleak. I remember that much as well. Yeah.
I wonder if then, to answer the question, is like, we want the end goal to be that they're sunsetting one of these locations, right, to disrupt the whole operation. I wonder if this has to be done in a sort of metaphorical way, like less a literal technological solution than it is something metaphorical. Because I also remember in that setting, we did have more conceptual stuff than we did, laser cannons and battleships and space elevators.
Yeah, there was a lot of sort of internal suffering going on, I guess. And
ironically, I do remember a laser beam weapon of some kind.
There was,
though.
yeah. The lasers were I think it was the only way that the robots could feel pain, and they used that to study how pain worked. Yeah.
That sounds vaguely correct.
Yeah. Well, maybe then it's a question of like, if the darkness of the human psyche is really what's the opposition to these machines. I imagine then it might be by forcing the jungle to grow exponentially and consume the world in some way.
I like that idea. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to start it. But wasn't there some conceit within that setting that like the world was essentially doomed? There was no way to save it, but there was one way that we can maybe blacken the eye of the hive mind of some kind.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't there like a supernova happening?
Yeah, the robots were like triggering a supernova. And I think they wanted to be there to witness it, to be able to research it.
And they were going to do that to every star in the universe.
That was the plan. To basically, like, blot out all the stars in the universe.
Okay, there we go. I think we can start there. And I think that whatever, like, rebel force we have, instead of blinking out all of them, something happens where it prevents that from happening and cuts them off from expanding further. I think that's what we're going to have to figure out. I mean, like, I think the idea of the jungle growing exponentially is a good way to start that.
Agreed. Yeah.
Or maybe even not even necessarily the entire world, but maybe just one, because I'm visualizing, right, like the jungle growing and twisting into some giant spire that is like covering the thing that is supposed to blot out the sun or destroy the sun, rather.
Okay.
Interesting.
I'm sure that there's something that we're missing because I have not visited that setting in quite a while.
Yeah, I re-listened to it and there was just a ton there.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that setting being very dense, but in a good way.
Yeah, there was also something about a I forget what we called it, but it was some sort of like creature-esque thing that was deep in the darkness that could consume life and the robots, if I'm remembering. I'm like doing a poor job of explaining it because I don't remember what it was exactly. But in the setting, we even talked about how there could be a person who like actively tries to release that to destroy the robots and themselves in the process.
It makes me think of like a Reverse Sunshine, like that movie.
Yeah, we actually had talked about that movie in that setting.
Oh yeah.
We did indeed. Yeah, I remember that. All right, well, what else do we want to explore about this setting? I mean, we've got kind of the narrative bit down. Do we want to talk about what the world looks like after these humans have succeeded? Or is it like these humans are fucking dead? Or is it they're alive, but in a world that is now pitch black and full of like screaming robots?
Sounds like a nice place. Yeah, I could see it being also bleak, but like in a different way. And
yeah,
I do still really like the idea of the jungle having overtaken everything.
Agreed. Yeah.
And it's now just this like extremely densely jungled planet that's completely covered, and as soon as you kind of get past that tree line, it's oppressively dark. And I imagine that a lot of really strange things lurk down there, and husks of the old robots that have died off because they no longer have solar power.
I can support this. I'm trying to figure out what else we can do about it, because I remember terraforming played a big part of that setting.
Yeah, the jungle itself had been like a not failed terraforming effort, but I think it was humans had landed there and tried to terraform, and the terraforming took off faster and stronger than they had expected because of all that sunlight that caused the trees to grow.
I wonder if what this setting needs is something mundane to focus it, to wrap a story around. Like, so I'm thinking, as an example, I just watched this movie. I talked to you guys about it before, which is pretty old.
The Matrix 4.
Actually, well, it's from 2019-ish, called High Life.
Pretty old.
And it's yeah, so it's the one with the guy from Twilight, and he's Robert like Pattinson. A prisoner on the spaceship with other prisoners who are like sent to do an experiment near a black hole, and it's pretty bleak. But the way the story centers itself is it has like a child that he has to raise. And so like it all ends up being about these relationships they have on the ship. So I wonder then if there's something in this setting, like whether that could be driven by like a character or a character concept that then expresses all of these other situations, like the growing forests, the looming doom of the universe, the possibility of survival. I mean, we could literally borrow like the birth of a new human life.
Yes,
that changes
exactly
things.
What I was thinking.
Like do a Raised by Wolves kind of thing, where there had
Raised by Wolves, that'd be great.
There had been some like embryos set aside for population creation, and somehow they actually did get born.
I love the idea that what ends up happening, right, is that this spire, or rather, the plan by the robots is foiled. So there's no more, or there's less in control psychopathic robots, right? But what they do is when they break into this robot citadel, they find this, like this first generation of embryos. And then that's where we pick up, where it's like you have the human robots again, who are trying to ensure that this generation can live and can thrive, because that's their only symbol of hope left.
I like that a lot. And something else too is given that the robots, the bodies themselves thrive off of solar energy, and now that the planet is entirely dark, maybe the maybe like human inhabited robots somehow transplanted their psyches into other creatures on the planet, like native animals to the jungle or something, so that they could still survive but in a different
Weird.
form.
That's
That is
very
weird.
strange.
Yeah.
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 If we want to take that like kind of transhumanist, through line and just see where it goes, yeah, that's very strange.
I mean, you could tell a
Mhm.
story that isn't even at the moment of that happening. It could be like eons
Oh, yeah.
after this has
Yeah.
happened. Now you have
Yeah.
the forest, which is the universe in a sense, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there's this child who's not maybe eons, maybe it's 16 years later. The child's grown up, and they're a child
Mhm.
wandering through the forest, and they speak to these animals, and the animals
Yes.
are in fact like humans.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's like you learn all this weird shit like through this child like wandering
Yeah.
the
That's
forest.
so cool.
Exactly. You could start it off as like a fantasy, right? Or like
Mhm.
even something like
Yeah.
The Jungle Book, where it's like,
It's
oh,
fucked up.
actually, you could easily just do this as a new Jungle Book, where it's
Yeah.
like, Baloo is trying, where they're trying to get Mowgli to the humans again, right?
Mhm.
Except this time it's like you've got to get on a fucking spaceship and go off into space.
Yes. I want to watch that Jungle Book.
Amazing.
Jungle Book from hell.
Yeah, Daniel, stop trying to turn all of our settings into schlock. God damn it.
I'm looking forward
it's
to
my
playing
calling.
this one shot. Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, see, Daniel is the executive producer who's like, we've run out of
Yes.
ideas for sequels, put it in space.
In
I-
space.
I could
Yeah.
see this as a pretty fun one shot where like all the players are various human animal creatures that are trying to escort this child to the like spacecraft that they've built. It could be interesting.
Oh yes, because everyone loves
Everyone
an escort
loves
mission where you
escort
have to
missions.
make sure that someone else lives. Courtney, you're running that if you want to do it, Courtney.
Because we've never done that in an RPG before that we played ever.
Every
We've never
character
had
is
a-
some horrifying monster from Annihilation, basically.
Yes.
Okay, that sounds fun. That sounds kind of fun, actually.
Yeah.
I want to be the screaming bear.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna move on. That does not sound fun to me. I don't know you guys.
It's a good time.
Oh my God. All right. I suppose that I should get on to my sequel at this, or my setting at this point. And this one is actually fairly new, but I'll give you some context as to why I chose to revisit Land of a Thousand Inventions, because one, I just like that setting a lot.
Mhm.
Two, upon revisiting and re-listening to it, I feel like there's so much that we left on the table. And three, I actually read a book on the Medici recently that I thought is like directly applicable to what we were
nice.
talking about. And like, there's so many different storylines and threads that I wanted to kind of revisit and recontextualize, because I think that setting in particular is really fascinating.
Mhm.
But with all that being said, I do want to talk about the main idea that I had in mind when I was rethinking, and the main reason that I was coming back to this is because, guys, we missed a huge opportunity. We could have Where in the World is Carmen SanDiego in this setting so very easily, and the fact that we didn't bring it up at all is heartbreaking to me. It is all about
Yes.
this setting is all about like giant art pieces and giant like like Renaissance art and Renaissance pieces and things that are like, and like we briefly talked about art thieves like when we're talking about the World Conference, but the fact that didn't spiral off into its own Carmen SanDiego spinoff, I had to bring it back so I could specifically talk about this. So that's my starting point. Where in the World is Carmen SanDiego? Art thieves galore, stealing monuments, stealing things of historical importance. I will leave it to you guys to go from there.
I just want to say I fucking love Carmen SanDiego. When I don't know how old I was. It was probably in my preteens. Carmen SanDiego, I mean, it wasn't like I was sexually attracted to her because I don't think it was physically possible for me at the time, but I loved her. I just thought she was such a cool concept, and I don't know why I did. She was just so mysterious, and the fact that she was like all over the world kind of gave me this interest in geography I never had. There was something about Carmen SanDiego that I found extremely attractive from a platonic and possibly pre-sexual point of view.
Daniel, I assure you that feeling is mutually shared. But also, like, her outfit is cool.
Yes.
Like, her voice actor's cool.
She's sassy.
She's more than sassy. She's sultry, Daniel.
She is sultry. That's right.
Every iteration, right? And every iteration of show that she's had, the theme song is fucking on point. Whether it be the animated Carmen SanDiego or the PBS Live's Carmen SanDiego, both of those theme songs are amazing for completely different reasons. And then on top of that, Daniel, like, she's, you know how there's like the bad boy trope? It's that, but for Carmen SanDiego.
But smart.
That is exactly
but smart.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and she never gets caught. You never catch Carmen SanDiego. Like, that's kind of the whole point.
It's like the Joker where he's like, I don't even know what I'd do if I got a hold of that man. I go crazy.
Okay. Don't bring Joker into this conversation, Daniel. I love
Joker
you.
from Batman Begins, not from the new stuff that everybody
You mean Dark
files.
Knight?
Yeah, from Dark Knight. He was cool.
Courtney, how do you feel about being sexually attracted to Carmen SanDiego?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think we're all in agreement there.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be, right? But okay, but my general concept, right, is, and mind you, for the younger listeners out there, we're not talking about the newer cartoon that came out on Netflix. I have no context for that. We're talking specifically about the 90s cartoons. So just getting that out there now. Huh. Yes, and I think she's a teenager, which is why, like, some people might be like, "Oh, that's kind of creepy and weird." No. It's not like that. The Carmen SanDiego that we're talking about is like probably close to our age and runs a criminal syndicate, all that good stuff. I'm sure that we should probably watch that series at some point, but maybe it's not for us anymore. Although, who knows? We're probably still dog shit at geography, so we might need to be better at that. So my general concept is we've got Art Thieves Syndicate, and that's what I want to do, is like build that. Like, let's build a syndicate of art thieves that are not just like stealing baubles and rings, but they're stealing entire monuments, entire buildings, and stuff like that. That's what I want to go for.
I have a question here.
Please.
Like, for one, I'm super excited about that. But for two, can the ultimate heist for them be stealing Atlantis itself?
Obviously. Fucking obviously, Daniel, yes. I was building towards that, but yes.
Yes. That's the first thought I had.
Yeah, exactly. The whole concept is, and mind you, that kind of makes them not evil necessarily, or not even like bad guys necessarily, because exactly. I can even see an altruistic purpose in, like, we're stealing all of these monuments so we can get to Atlantis and bring it back. Like, that can even be their ultimate goal.
Oh yeah. Is it one? Okay, so Carmen SanDiego. I mean, I don't remember the lore surrounding her. Is it one person, or is it like you're saying you want a syndicate of people?
So Carmen SanDiego runs and owns and operates a syndicate of villains.
Oh, she does.
Yes,
I didn't know that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh.
So remember in the PBS show, you never immediately start off by trying to catch Carmen SanDiego. You have to find her henchmen first.
Okay.
And then you go on and eventually try and catch Carmen SanDiego. It's very similar in the cartoon as well.
So who is our Carmen SanDiego? Like, my first thought, which doesn't make any sense, was that our Carmen SanDiego is actually Da Vinci. But maybe that's like a secret.
No.
I don't know.
No. I'm actively turning that down. One, I want it to be a badass female character.
So a new person.
So a new character that we've never touched upon before.
Okay. So it's Lady Da Vinci.
Yeah,
Lady Da Vinci.
Da Vinci for her.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's definitely a woman, and it's definitely a new character, and they run a syndicate essentially.
Yes, that's correct. Also, the other point that I wanted to bring up, this is another thing that I kind of got into with the Medici book that I was reading, how important patronage really is to the arts. Like the amount of art that was funded by the Medici and their family was absolutely astounding. Like things that I have seen in person, things that we like continue to think about and continue to like is all as a result of the Medici having this deep love and appreciation for art, poetry, et cetera, et cetera. And that's one thing that I really wanted to kind of facilitate here as well is whatever, like Carmen SanDiego's our version, right? She is directly funded by a major patron, a major political family within this world. It is done, kind of with hands off, like they funnel money to that organization somewhere or the other. But that's the other concept that I really wanted to roll with.
So you mean that she's getting money from one of the families, or are you asking, is she a part of one of those families as well?
Maybe, why not both, right?
Yeah, when you first brought her up, I was thinking that maybe she is a part of one of the families.
I mean, I can see how you can have both, right? Where she's part of the family and maybe that family like tacitly endorses her, like secretly funds her while openly like denouncing her and her thieving. Like, oh, that's like not us.
More.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there's something interesting. I think at first, my first feeling was like, okay, I'd rather her be like someone who's poor who made herself into like a famous thief, right? Who's not wealthily connected. But then there's something alluring about the really rich daughter who turned her back on the family, is smarter than them, and they still need her. And maybe she has other ideas for her destiny than what she was given at birth,
Yeah, I like that direction a lot.
We could merge those ideas, Daniel. We could have it so Carmen maybe she's adopted into the family due to her brilliance and due to, like, so, and that actually gives her a little bit more of distance, like kind of plausible deniability, where it's like this rich patron family brings her in because of how brilliant she is, and then essentially gives her money and turns on her, finger quotes, and then like continues to fund her and her operations. It's like,
that makes sense.
I think there should also be as well to kind of give her own agency, like like she's the one who kind of spearheads this idea, is really passionate, is really ambitious, and says, look, this is what we can do. I'm, like adopted into this family. You have this. It's all her idea, essentially. Is what I'm trying to get at.
And maybe the Atlantis thing is her own secret mission. Like the family just knows about the art aspect, and they just think, oh, we're getting all these amazing pieces of art and kind of stealing from our enemies. But she's the one who's like, no, actually, my
there we go.
Actual goal is this secret thing.
I love it.
Yeah, that totally works for me. I am fully supportive of that idea. Yeah. Oh, goodness. What else do we want to talk about with this? Because I feel like, so what else do we want to bring up within this setting? Because this is already really exciting to me. And obviously, right, like you can start this out playing for the Syndicate or against the Syndicate, or starting one way and then switching. I mean, how would you guys kind of take this story? Courtney, how would you see the story? Where would you start and where would you want to see it go?
I could see it as you're a group that's investigating these thefts, and you are actually trying to find Carmen SanDiego, basically. And then it's sort of up to you along the way if you want to persecute her or support her goals or what. I think that could be interesting. Like if you don't really know what her ultimate goal is initially.
And Daniel, same question. What would you do with this concept?
I think it would be, because we, in the original setting, we focused a lot on the workshops and then the inventors, like how the inventors or the artistic inventors create this new magic item essentially, and then there's like technological uses for it that the workshops produce as merchants. Since there's a focus on the families, which I think is really interesting, you could have lots of rival thieving guilds that are part of the syndicate that are funded by different families, and so they're trying to like maybe steal a lot of the originals. And so it's a question of like, which faction do you want to join? And I assume then that the Carmen SanDiego character, she really has kind of authority over how they all interact with each other and what the rules are of the game, even though they're all pitted against each other in different ways. So I could imagine if you're running this as like a game or like, you know, as a story, you know, you can have characters who have to make unsteady alliances with other thieving guilds to pull off even bigger capers that everybody can win from.
Love those concepts. I would also want to point out that there's another option that we can go with here, which is starting out as the, you know, our settings equivalent of Interpol, knowing that Carmen SanDiego is quote unquote a problem. And then, you know, with, you know, stealing from Courtney's ideas, like kind of putting them in these positions where they see the good and the bad of the organization that they're trying to nab. You know, they grab henchmen and they trying to work their way towards Carmen SanDiego. And then there's this whole massive plot that you can kind of see unfurl before you. Right?
Because you definitely need like the place. That what were the characters, the two kids, like who do they belong to in the show in Carmen SanDiego? The ones that are after her.
I really don't remember very much, but I do remember that Interpol was involved in some way.
So you need that leg basically for this to work.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of what I want. I thought it'd be kind of interesting to start out as a, you know, because that's another faction that we can, that we'd be creating is if art heists are such a thing. And I would imagine that they would be fairly prevalent as well, right? That you would have to have an agency that not only stops and, you know, like, let me try that again. You would have to have some kind of an agency that not only prevents these crimes, but also returns and finds the stolen artwork and makes sure that it gets back to its rightful owner as well. So that you could see that faction, that organization as being entirely altruistic and something that it has to come from multiple nations. It has to be, you know, because I would imagine that if it was from one particular nation, it's obviously going to be selfish and more corrupt than something that is a multinational organization, right?
Yeah, and there would be the issue of forgeries too. Like if they were, excuse me, like if they were to recover a stolen artwork, and what's to stop somebody from just claiming like, oh, that's a forgery, like. You still need to find the real thing, or there's all sorts of stuff that could happen there.
Well, I am so excited that we got to like kind of revisit these settings again. I'm actually buzzing with the idea of like running a game that is like all about Renaissance Interpol. I think that's such a cool idea. And not only that, I think that it's the reason I also am really attracted by this idea is because it is so different than the original kind of adventure concept that we went with in that scenario to begin with, right? Which incorporated a lot of like the lower end type of, or which incorporated a lot of like the lower class people and the church, which I think was like kind of a weird ad. And also, again, 30% more blood, cum, and tears for everyone, because again, that's why I'm here to do this podcast. But like I was like, we could have, I think I wanted to showcase the diversity of this setting, because you can have your low-born adventure, but you can also have this high concept, like Carmen SanDiego style of like heist and adventure and stuff like that. And also we didn't even talk about the idea that you could have this be heist after heist after heist, and that could be its own game, right? Like you could write like a much brighter version of Blades in the Dark, you know, or something like that. I think that I wanted to showcase what you could really do with this setting is what I'm trying to say. Well, that will do it for. Look, 2021 sucked for a lot of people, us included, but there was also a lot of really cool settings that we did as well. We continued to do our interviews. We had new patrons join us again. Thank you all so much. And 2021's been kind of crazy. Time is a weird flat circle, but we had some really great settings as well. And that's what we wanted to bring you. And I just want to say how excited I am that we're going to be continuing to build brand new worlds in 2022. And remember that if you want us to build your worlds in this year, next year, whenever, go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, click on the submit prompt link, and fill out the information. We will build your world. Don't worry about it. If you want to follow us on social media, we're over at Let's Worldbuild on Twitter, and we are on Discord. And if you're feeling particularly generous, you can come join our Patreon with a link for both of those in the description. That'll do it for this episode of Worldbuild with Us. Remember that we love you very much, and we're going to get through this together. Until next week.